Good morning. Verse 6, 1 Peter 1:6. In this you rejoice. In what? Well, what we talked about from the end of verse 4 and verse 5 in particular, that salvation is secured by God. Maybe even all the way back to verse 3, that salvation comes from God, is given by God, and is secured by God. He's saying, guys, since salvation comes from and is secured by God, and He gives this to you as His work, verse 6, in this you rejoice, though now for a little while, if necessary, you have been grieved by various trials. Have you been grieved by various trials? The word for various there is the word that forms etymologically the beginning of our word polka dot, poikilos. Many-colored trials, or varied trials, or multifaceted trials, these very little, of all different dots along the way. You've faced them. You've dealt with these trials. And he says, you know what? The fact that God gave you salvation is supposed to give you joy in the midst of your difficulty. So in our difficulty, our tendency is to sort of get our head down, thinking about the trauma, the difficulty, the challenge, maybe even thinking about how we're going to get through it. And Peter says, you know, the first thing when you have trials is you ought to just rejoice in the fact that that thing isn't going to be what has the final say in your life. The final say in your life is God's, and that's already secure. So this is the practical implications of the doctrine of God's sovereign grace in your salvation and eternal security. Because it's all of God, you don't have to dwell upon your temporary difficulties to such a place that they take away your joy, because your joy can be stored in the eternal, life-giving grace and the security of that grace that God affords in your salvation. No one can ever take it away. And that is cause for joy, even in the midst of various different kinds of trials that sure grieve you. But that grief doesn't have to define you, because your salvation does. Have a great day today.